Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can all hear me. If you have your headphones on, you'll probably hear me a bit more clearly. Welcome to this first session of the London Produce Show. My name is John Giles. I work for a company called Promar International. We're an agricultural food and market research consultancy company, and we're here today to talk about a very important topic, the creation of what's known as the Pacific Alliance in Latin America, which is it's a sort of quite a complex and far-reaching agreement between Chile, Mexico, Colombia and Peru, and it's quite interesting at a time in our own history here in the UK. We're leaving an economic grouping in a year's time that the rest of the world seem to think it's quite a good idea to get together in economic groupings. So we have, to start the session, we're going to have Matthew Churchill from Greencell, which is one of the leading importers in the UK and very active in the Pacific Alliance region. Matthew's going to tell us a little bit about the Greencell business, their involvement in Latin America and the 4 countries we're talking about in particular, and then some thoughts about what's happening in the UK market, and then we'll go into a panel discussion where we'll have Ignacio Fernandez from ProChile, Jaime Cardenas from the Peruvian Trade and Investment Office in London, Julian Gustavo Salazar from ProMexico, and last but certainly not least, Felipe Campo from ProColombia. And we have a number of questions we would like to ask them, but clearly as we go through that session, there'll be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions as well. So that's enough of me, but we're here. To me, the Pro Alliance or the Pacific Alliance is it's a very interesting concept. It's quite unique, I think, in many ways, and it could have all sorts of impacts on the supply of fruits and vegetables to not only the UK but the rest of the world. So to start us off, Matthew, thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. You're going to tell us a little bit about Greencell and your involvement in the Pacific Alliance region. Thank you.
So I'm Matthew Churchill from Greencell, a business development manager. Oh, let's have a look. So Greencell was founded in the year 2000. We're fresh produce specialists. We've got a centre of excellence for avocado ripening, handling and distribution in Lincolnshire. We've got expertise in all fruit, salad and vegetable crops, and we supply to a whole range of customer segments: retail, food service, wholesale, and also the schools government scheme. We're vertically integrated, so we're part of Westphalia, so we're the chain from grower to customer. Okay, so Westphalia belongs to the Hans Merensky Holdings Group, which is a shareholder of the Hans Merensky Foundation. So the Hans Merensky, going back into history, in the late 20s purchased Westphalia estates in South Africa. In a very short space of time, he applied principles in ensuring that sustainability, humanitarian and ecological impacts were at the forefront of the business. He experimented with avocado plantings. He initially planted 6,000 avocado trees. We've still got a lot of those avocado trees existing on our farms today. And from that, the experiments were a success. They were planted at different altitudes to experiment with different seasonality. And from that, plantings were expanded on a very large scale. Today, where we are, the corporate philosophy and culture is a continuation of that business ethos in the late 20s, ensuring that humanitarian, social and ecological impacts are at the forefront of our business. So where we are today, we're vertically integrated. We're one of the largest avocado producers in the world. We've got offices in a number of European countries and also global as well. And we produce a lot of avocados in the Americas, Latin America and Africa, as well as mangoes in Burkina Faso and South Africa. So we grow and ripen. We also research and develop. We've got one of the world's largest research facilities for tropical and subtropical crops in South Africa. We pack and process, and we care and conserve for our customers. So our companies within the Pacific Alliance, we have companies in Chile, Mexico, Colombia and Peru. So a whole vast array of products are grown and supplied to a range of customers. And I've been asked to talk a little bit about trends affecting sales of fresh produce in the UK. Well, it's a whole vast range. Vegan and vegetarian is really on trend. Convenience, scratch cooking, there's a whole surge in trend for people cooking from scratch with products. Snacking, getting more into people's busy lives. Mexican and Latin American cuisine is becoming increasingly important and increasingly popular in the UK. Healthy eating and wellness, free-from foods, social media plays a very large part. Ethical and environmental awareness is also at the forefront of customers' mind. Customers care greatly of where their produce comes from and how it's produced. Food inflation and economic uncertainty is also having a significant impact, and something that I'm putting as a bit of a standalone is avocado is a trend in itself in the UK, and it's a very much on-trend product. So a little bit on the avocado, it's not just the plaything of millennials. The avocado is amongst the most important traded tropical and subtropical fruits in the world. Global growth is seen at circa 15 to 20%. The statistics vary, but that's year on year. So colossal growth. A little bit on avocado consumption in Europe. A busy slide, but the key points here, if we're looking at the UK perspective, are roughly about 1.5 kilograms per capita avocado consumption. Now that's about 180% increase when looking at 5 years ago to figures 2011-2012. Europe as an overall is, we're looking at 993 grams, so there's still a long way to go. And as we go down the list here, we've got countries in Europe up to 200% and over with growth in consumption. A little bit of a snapshot of comparing the US and the EU. So up to 2018, avocado was 1,100 million kilograms in the US. In the EU, we're 600 million kilograms. So there's still a long way to go there. But looking at the growth that's been seen in both big markets of consumption there, there's a long way to go in each. So pressures facing the industry. So this is generalized, but also looking specific at avocados. Emerging market demands. We're seeing emerging markets such as China getting a taste for avocados. And if the population, some statistics that came out recently, if the Chinese consumption reaches anywhere near that of what the US is, then the world needs to produce 10 times what it does at the moment to feed a demand for that country. Availability of resources, land, water, the sustainability elements, cost pressures that we're all facing, established markets demands, we're just looking at where that's going from and coming to. Supply versus demand. Avocado is a product that there's just never really been a surplus, so where does all this extra fruit come from? With production only increasing at 3% year on year and demand at 15 to 20% increase year on year, there's a pinch point coming, so we need to find solutions to that. Domestic consumption in all producer countries is also increasing as well. And currency fluctuations, climate change being of a huge concern as well. So where do our avocados come from for Europe? So Europe specific, they're growing a lot more areas around the world, but there's really, the avocado is a tropical, subtropical crop. And the furthest, I think, shipping time that we receive is from Chile, which is about 28 days. But the rest are mainly from America, Africa, South Africa, Latin America, Europe, and Israel. So where is the avocados coming from in this year, 2018? The projected supply, if we look at this from some figures from the World Avocado Organization, taking the Pacific Alliance countries, over 60% is estimated to come from Chile, Mexico, Colombia, and Peru. So why are the Pacific Alliance countries so important for these products and for us? They're essential for year-round supply. They're established global top producer countries of not only avocados, but many other product types. They're real bread baskets of production. The spread of risk with economic, climatic, and demand that we've just seen from the threats facing the industry. The spread of seasonality, there's long periods of availability. So where just a few years ago in recent history, Peru was seen as having a window of opportunity for supply of around 5 months. We're now able to increase that by a further 5 months by exploiting microclimates in each of those localities in the country. Multiple production windows, and we've also got multiple, from that, the perfect growing conditions for avocados. It puts the trees into a cycle of flowering up to 3 times in the same year. That has some challenges as well, but that also gives year-round production for local markets and for export. So nearing the end, hope to invite you all to Colombia next year for the World Avocado Congress. These are held only once every 4 years. It's 23rd to the 27th of September in Medellin in 2019, and it's a huge focus on avocado production, but also scientific, marketing, all areas associated with avocados for a week-long exhibition. Thank you for listening, and I'll pass it back to John.
Do you want to take some headphones? You got some? Yeah. Okay, Matthew. Thanks for that sort of snapshot of what your company's doing in the Pacific Alliance region. Just before we go into the panel, your own personal reaction to the formation of this Pacific Alliance, the sort of economic investment agreements that are being reached. If we could perhaps just have the what would it mean to the UK? Do you think, in particular?
Well, with the volume that we need to take from these countries to guarantee and secure supply, I think it's essentially important, especially when we look at avocados there, which is the product that we specialise in the UK and also have global presence. Over 60%, I think the estimate is 65% that's coming from the Pacific Alliance countries. We need it, it's essential.
Yeah, so it's quite a big thing.
It's a huge
and
thing.
It's the sort of thing in the UK we should know more about.
Yeah, it is,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much indeed for that, Matthew. So my first question, and I think the first question we're going to get all the panel to answer this one, if that's okay. So could you just tell us a bit about the Pacific Alliance and what it means, particularly in terms of the fruits and vegetables sector? And maybe if we could sort of start from Jaime and then work our way back down. You've already got a microphone, yeah. So what does this mean in the context, or how important is the produce industry in the context of this agreement? Is it a big part of the alliance or a bit part?
I don't know whether, let me start saying that in the UK market, the participation of the Pacific Alliance countries in what fresh fruits and vegetables are, it reaches the 10.5% of the market. So our presence here, Matthew was saying about the avocado, but when we have the mix of products coming from the Pacific Alliance countries, these not only the base, the figure, but the quantity and the quality reaches, certain levels that are very important, not only for the market, but also for us as suppliers of these kind of products.
Yeah, so it's a big deal as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, sure.
In Peru.
Yeah, not only in Peru, but for all of us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think we all share the importance of the Pacific Alliance for the UK, and I just would like to give some numbers just to give a flavor of the importance of the Pacific Alliance fresh produce for the UK. And I'm going to start with banana. As you may know, Colombia is the first supplier in the UK of bananas. Mexico is the 14th largest supplier for the UK, and Peru is number 18. In terms of Persian limes as well, Mexico is the 5th supplier of limes to the UK, but also Chile and Peru have a big share of this product in the UK market. So we have an important presence of these products from the Pacific Alliance. Of course, avocado, as it has already been mentioned, the 4 countries are in the top 10 suppliers for the UK. Peru is, of course, the first one, followed by Chile, which is the second one,
Yeah.
and Colombia, the 8th, and Mexico, the 9th. So we can see that the avocado is a Pacific Alliance product in the UK.
And again, Julian, in Mexico, is this a subject that people are talking enthusiastically about? What's the reaction in Mexico to this sort of development?
I think the producers and exporters in Mexico are very optimistic about the future in Europe and particularly in the UK. And in our agency in Mexico, we are starting to see the interest of producers to diversify and to look into the European Union as a potential market. Just to probably finalize my intervention, I would like to talk about the asparagus as well. Peru and Mexico together represent 85% of total imports in the UK. So I think we have emblematic Pacific Alliance products, and I think we complement each other very, very well.
Yeah, good. Okay, Ignacio, Chile's been a supplier to the UK for a long time and been very successful. In fact, in many ways, sort of led the charge from Latin America maybe 25 years ago with a whole range of off-season products. So again, in terms of the relevance of the Pacific Alliance to the fruit and vegetable industry, can you just sort of give us a feel from what's happening in Santiago?
Yes, of course. I mean, Pacific Alliance for Chile is quite important, not only in fresh fruit, but in general terms, it's an alliance, trade alliance that allows us to have, investment treaty flows of goods and services, and of course, in the fresh fruit is quite important. As you mentioned, Chile has been a very big producer of fruit and exporter of fruit for many years ago. Just one number: 82 million people eat every day Chilean fruits around the world. And Pacific Alliance particularly is quite important for us because allows us be renewing us in promoting our fruits and allow us being in forums like this or promoting in joint pavilion with our or other countries, allied countries. And just give you a couple of examples regarding Pacific Alliance, important Pacific Alliance for the United Kingdom. If you look at some of specific fruits like strawberries, like melons, clementines, probably the market share of the Pacific Alliance in the United Kingdom is quite low. I mean, if you compare with what the United Kingdom is importing from the other countries from the world or the European Union, and I say in some cases it's less than 2%, less than 1%, and of course there we have a big gap to improve our exportation. So we're working on that. We're working to try to keep our leadership and also work together to try to increase the specific niche where we can increase our production, our exports.
Yeah. Okay, so for Chile again, it's an important development in the sort of growth of exports, not just to the UK but to other parts of the world, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the interesting thing about the Pacific Alliance is that the Pacific Alliance is, unlike the European Union, is each country maintain its own ability to export, to promote fruit, but also we have the possibility to work together in terms of promoting our products.
I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, Ignacio, but when you say that it's not like the EU, that will go down well in the UK. That's a good sentiment to talk about. You know, we're not like the. So it's interesting, yeah. So it's not like the EU. So some of the objectives seem to be quite similar, but yeah, hey, not being like the EU. Whatever you think of Brexit, whatever you think, yeah, that will be a popular statement in the UK at the moment. So Philippe, just again some sort of general view from you about the importance of the Pacific Alliance and its relationship to the fruit and vegetable sector, maybe.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to comment on what my colleagues have mentioned as well, and seeing it as an overall. The importance of the Pacific Alliance as well, it helps us tackle not only opportunities, but as well to be creative in coming with solutions together to face the big problems that the the challenging world of the fruits and vegetables are facing. In that sense, on our case, and I'm pretty sure you're aware that we're being into a really interesting peace process. And in terms of, as Matthew called it, in terms of resources, this means that Colombia has one of the biggest land opportunities in terms of hectares to be grown in the world. We're one of the 7 nations, what we call frontera agrícola. So the opportunities are huge within the alliance as well to have availability of land. And I'm pretty sure Jaime will comment later on a very interesting example of a Peruvian company that is taking advantage of this in Colombia.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Look, to me, I don't know that much about the Pacific Alliance. I've started to read up about it and hear more and more about it being talked about. But that's a really interesting sort of snapshot of what it's all about and what the benefits to your own individual countries might be. But also, it seems to me, is a regional benefit as well. So my understanding is that one of the real key points of this Pacific Alliance is sort of the ability to perhaps negotiate for market access around the world on a common basis. Is that my right understanding? Jaime, could you maybe sort of start us on that? And how does that work? Because at one level you're all actually competing against each other, but is this sort of an issue that you have to tackle together? How does it? What's the thinking?
In short, the philosophy behind the Pacific Alliance is of countries similar in what economical expectations are, the political similarity between or among the countries, and that is basically what we have. You know, we are trying to build a platform of cooperation, complementation, interacting, free flow of people, which, in fact, creates an alternative for the world. Let me finish. We are not working specifically free trade agreements as a common platform, but that is one of the plans that we have in the future. One of the alternatives with Brexit is the negotiation of a free trade agreement with the countries of the Pacific Alliance, instead of a multilateral agreement instead of a bilateral agreement with all of them. You know that today we are basically either a bilateral agreement, the 4 countries, Chile and Mexico has a bilateral agreement, Colombia and Peru has a multilateral agreement, what we call it a complementation agreement. But there is this platform that we are trying to use as a whole, as a negotiation platform.
Is this because some of the issues are so challenging and so big that actually for any one country to maybe do it all on their own, it's better to be doing it with other people? Is that?
As I said, the countries are very similar. Well,
yeah.
There are some differences in certain sectors and development in sectors, but it's easier if we present ourselves as a platform or these many people, these GDP and so forth, that actually give a different face that, playing alone or solo.
Yeah, and maybe Ignacio, could you just give us a view maybe on the same point about this idea that you'll do things together? Sometimes it's easier, it's quite tempting to say we'll do it on our own. Maybe it's not natural nature to always cooperate with people who are next door neighbours.
Yeah, of course.
But just what's the thinking here about market access, promotion? I understand.
Yeah,
area.
Probably I have to say that as I said before, Pacific Alliance is not a single market. It's not a common custom union. It's a free trade agreement. We have a free trade agreement between us, and we also have an umbrella free trade agreement, which is a state-of-the-art free trade agreement, if you want. But we're not a custom union. We're not a single market. What that means? That means that we are independent totally in regarding what can we negotiate with other countries and how can we promote our products, in this case fresh fruit, in the world. But we have decided in this area that we have to work together in order to provide promotion and a brand like Pacific Alliance, you know.
Yeah.
And as Jaime said, let's say if we have, let's say during some season, during the contra season, we have avocado and some during the year, but probably Mexico has avocado during other season, and we can complement each other. And the buyers have to know that we can complement each other, and they can buy avocado from the south in some season and from the north in some other season.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy behind. And of course, it's an ongoing process. We're working on that. But essentially, it's a big free trade agreement between countries that have a main objective, which is growth together.
What's the expected sort of time span for the roll? I mean, it's quite a complex agreement, isn't it? What's the expected time span for the rollout of the whole Pacific Alliance sort of trade agreement, investment agreement? Just quickly.
Well, I think the free trade agreement is already in place. I mean, 92% of all products exchanged between the countries is already tariff-free.
Yeah.
So that's already happening. I think the next steps are more about cooperation. They are about working together to add value to the value chains in various products. And going back to the issue about free trade agreements, I think it's difficult to predict what's going to be the strategy in the next few years. But I think the important bit about the Pacific Alliance is that we all share common interests. We all have similar economies in terms of size. We are very open economies as well. We all have free trade agreements with many countries in very different regions. So I think those similarities are the strength of the Pacific Alliance for the future. Yeah. So it will be easier for other countries to basically sit down and negotiate individually, or perhaps we will start seeing more multilateral efforts to.
Yeah, sure. Hey, that's great. That's great, Julian. Philippe from Colombia again. So my understanding is that some of this might involve sort of joint promotional activity at some stage in the future. Could you just give us some sort of insight about the thinking on that and how that might operate?
It is actually happening at the moment.
So this is an ongoing thing?
Yes, since the alliance started, we've been having what we call a macro-rueda de negocios, a business matchmaking yearly, and in which we get together the 4 countries, and during 3 days, we not only share experiences, which is in complement, which is what the alliance is for, but we do business within this business matchmaking. And it's and we've been finding really great value chain examples, which actually Ignacio is going as well to comment later, because we find a way, for example, to get through Asia through Chile with a very special case that we would like to comment later. But it's happening already, and one of the actually the values. Big values, it's the joint promotion and send the right message that that the alliance it's getting bigger. That's a lot of traction. There are more countries that want to join us, countries in the region. I was just talking yesterday with a guy from Ecuador, from Pro Ecuador. And I think news are coming in that sense, from Ecuador.
So, you mentioned Ecuador. Who else might be sort of possible members of the alliance?
54 countries are taking a very close look to the process.
Wow.
Countries in the Asia, like New Zealand, Australia. Yeah. Of course, the UK is one of the big observers. So it's generating a huge interest.
Yeah. So 54 countries, that would be 54. Some group.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll take a bit of management, but hey, anything's possible.
Exactly.
Okay, so in terms of the real benefits then maybe of this Pacific Alliance group, the more I hear about it, the more impressive it sounds, and it sounds quite aspirational, but hey, that's okay as well. But the real benefits to the UK market in terms of fruit and vegetable supply for a company like Greencell, what will be the difference between what we've experienced to date and what we might experience, say, in sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. Again, maybe Ignacio, if you could start us off, and then we'll go back to Jaime.
I mean, yeah, I mean, probably I can start with the example that Felipe just mentioned before, just to give an example about how Pacific Alliance can work. It's an example that is in part is related to fresh fruit, but in part is related to some more value-added chain. There is some tropical fruit that are produced in Colombia. I don't remember exactly what kind of the fruit, but tropical fruit that we don't produce in Chile, and they send that fruit to Chile. In Chile, is make a manufacture process. I mean, that transform that fruit in pulp, juice pulp, and because of you change the tariff line, you can apply for the tariff benefit that Chile has with East Asian countries because of the free trade agreements we have already signed with them. So this is a kind of stuff that through Pacific Alliance you can do. I mean, you can export fresh fruit from Colombia to Chile, transform that fruit in pulp juice, and then to export that using the free trade networks we have already in Chile to the third countries in Asia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jaime?
I think Matthew would cooperate with this answer, but you know, from our point of view, what do you get from the Pacific Alliance, specifically, you know, worldwide, but specifically to Europe and the UK? We are producers of different qualities of fruits and vegetables, so we actually reach every level, every segment of the market. You know, there are products for the high-end market, there are products from the middle market, there are products from the lower market, lower prices and all that. The advantage is basically almost in all the products being the countries in the two hemispheres, actually the supply is all year long.
Yeah.
Certainly, there is a huge variety of products. You know, for instance, in avocado, we have the soft peel and Hass. So we are actually present with 2 different qualities or 3 different qualities of avocado. The reliability. I think together with quality, reliability is almost a standard today. You know, if you want to be in the fresh fruit market, you have to be good in all these things.
Yeah.
Quality and reliability is the standard, basically. But most of that, or apart from that, we're also very much into developing products for a specific niche, like organics, for instance. There are these products that are fair trade, which actually shows our responsibility with the environment and the social responsibility, or corporate social responsibility.
Yeah. My understanding as well, and maybe again, Philippe, I could come to you, and then Julian as well, that part of the drive for the Pacific Alliance is to increase inward investment opportunities. Could you explain to us a little bit how that might operate? You've alluded, Philippe, about why people might want to think about investing in your country. Could you just tell us again a little bit of how that might play out in real life, the sort of investment protocols that are being developed?
I would like to refer to the case that, and I don't want to steal the thunder from Jaime, but perhaps you can tell the Camposol example. I think that's the best way to put it in plata blanca, like we said in Spanish, like in a very clear way.
I don't know whether you know about Camposol, but Camposol is a Peruvian company that today has become a global company. You know, today they actually participate in the New York Stock Exchange, and they have different ways to get their money. But this company has grown over the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years, establishing distribution centers in Europe and the United States, and now they are just open a distribution channel in China. And being, this global, I wouldn't say abandon, but they are looking for different alternatives in where they can get the best productivity and in the best time to supply their markets. Because today they have, as an idea to supply the needs of the market, and that's why, that's why one of the reasons that they have bought some land in Colombia,
Yeah.
and they are growing avocados at the moment there, with the purpose of growing other things as well.
And Philly, how is that sort of perceived? So we got some Peruvian guys want to come and invest. Is there a sort of very welcome attitude? This is what we need in our industry. That we welcome this investment, or is it, hey, watch out, here come our competitors? Or what's the thinking in Colombia?
No, actually, I think that's the beauty as well of the alliance, because culturally we're so close. The language, we have a huge admiration in terms of culture for these countries. For example, in the 80s, we grew up with the Mexican television, and that was incredible how close we got with the Mexicans. Same thing with the.
So there's no sort of defensive attitude here. This is all good.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Actually,
good.
we're opening the country, and that's part of what ProColombia does here in the UK. It's attracting investment, and that means we're doing the job.
Yeah. And Julian, could you just?
Yeah, if I may add, I think the 4 countries rank very well in the ease of doing business. So we are, as I said before, we are open economies. It is getting easier and easier to open companies in our countries, and this is, of course, something that is very appealing for UK companies or companies from many other countries. We are starting to see stronger linkages between European companies, British companies, and local companies. UK companies are trying to find the right partner for various things, from investing in R&D, but also in land acquisition. It has already been mentioned. So there is great interest in these 4 countries. We are starting to see investment going into the sector, at least in Mexico, and I'm sure it is the case for the other countries. And I think it has to do with the sort of, as I said before, the macroeconomic fundamentals are right in the 4 countries. We are open for business. We are working very hard to facilitate the opening of companies, and also we are working with our producers, with our farmers, to make them more aware of the challenges outside, the challenges to get to other markets. And we are working on capacity building and that sort of thing. And finally, I think we are also starting to see the investment also going the other way around. We are starting to see Mexican or Pacific Alliance companies, setting foot in the European market as well, through joint ventures or alliances to reach other markets.
Yeah, so there can be a dual benefit.
I think it's a dual benefit for sure.
Matthew, you've been sort of sitting here patiently after your very interesting sort of opening comment about Greencell's business and what have you. So you've been hearing these various comments about how the Pacific Alliance can work, what the benefits are, how it might open in the future. So clearly the Pacific Alliance is an important part of the world for your business generally. So the investment climate, will we see more involvement, do you think, in that part of the world in the future? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
And would you expect some of your competitors, I know you can't speak on their behalf, but would you expect to see other UK companies trying to take advantage of this sort of unique situation that's developing in the region?
Well, UK, we're part of Westphalia, which originates as a South African company, but we're now a global player, so it's seen as a global company. And our investments in Chile, Peru, Mexico, and Colombia are crucial to get to securing 52 weeks supply. We need that security of supply for our customers, for our markets all over the world, not just for the UK. And I'm sure there'll be more investment there, as we need to keep putting avocado orchards in to feed the growing demand. And going back to the market access, which is fantastic, the market access which is granted to the likes of China, which are now starting eating avocados. But that leaves us a little scared, because where are we going to get our fruit from in in a few years to come. So we need
You
to
think,
have
you
that.
think there's a concern that it might all end up in China rather than here in the UK?
The supply and demand issue is a real concern for us, and it's a very real threat, and that the consumption there is growing and growing, as well as other markets around the world, so domestic markets and as well as established markets as well. So our investment in those countries is crucial. Looking at the stats there, that this year we're seeing that about 65% of the European avocados consumption will come from the Pacific Alliance countries. So that's critical.
Is your investment strategy as much as about protecting supply to the UK as it is about exporting to other parts of the world?
It's global. It's global. So it's also consumption markets within the countries of production as well. So within the Pacific Alliance at the same time.
Sure. Okay, that's interesting. So one subject. I mean, you know, I'm sure you're totally aware of what's going on in the UK with Brexit at the moment. So one area that we're pretty emotive about is the movement of labour. And so the general wisdom is that in the UK there's already a fairly severe problem with availability of labour for horticultural production and packing and distribution, and it goes not just across horticulture but other areas of food, and in fact in other areas of the economy. We may, if we're not careful, sort of shoot ourselves in the foot on this one. My understanding, rightly or wrongly, and perhaps you guys can tell me, is that part of this Pacific Alliance Agreement will at some point involve more freedom of movement of labour around the region. Is my understanding that right, or am I getting it wrong? Ignacio, maybe you could start us on that one, and then Julian, maybe you could give us a view, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, for the time being, the movement of labor is not part of the agenda in the Pacific Alliance. Of course, we are country in the same continent. We share culture, languages. So a lot of people from Colombia come to Chile. People from Chile go to Peru, etc. But we don't have, as I told you, we're not a single market. So if you wanna go and work in Peru or in Colombia and you are Chilean, you have to obtain your visa and you have to apply for a visa requirement at this stage. Of course, it's quite easy to do it, but we don't have something similar that you have today, that is a free flows of goods and people in the European Union. In Pacific Alliance, for the time being, that is not the case.
So you're not going to make that, that's not a fundamental part of the agreement? Is that...
I think
elaborate. It's an area that we're besotted with this one in the UK.
I think
at the moment.
The whole issue about mobility of people has to do with facilitating access for companies from the 4 countries in their markets. So I mean, now it's much easier for a Mexican company to go and visit these 3 other countries for business, and this will of course bring lots of advantages, facilitate, I mean, trade and investment. So I think that's where we are at the moment. And obviously, I strongly believe that this will obviously benefit, the ecosystem in the sector. I mean, because we will share practices, we will share knowledge, we will share intelligence, market information, and it is through the collaboration between companies which has been facilitated through this agreement.
Yeah. Okay, look, we've asked a number. I wonder if there's any questions out on the floor that people would like to ask our panel at the moment. If you do, put your hand up, maybe just say where you're from. If not, I've got a few more we can ask. But Phil, I don't want to think it's just a private conversation between 6 guys standing at the front of the room. So, look, there's no obvious questions. We're going to do one more question, but that means you've got time to think of the question. The next question is going to come from one of you guys. And if you can't think of a question, I know 1 or 2 people in the audience, Christian, Chris, 1 or 2 other people. I will come to you for a question, whether you like it or not. Okay. So in terms of the evolving offer to the UK, what can we really expect, do you think, from this Pacific Alliance region over the next? Let's look ahead. The next 5 years, how might things change? And again, maybe Ignacio, if you could start us on this one, and then come back to Philippe for an answer.
I mean, in the case of Chile, at least, and I'm pretty sure my colleagues from the Pacific Alliance are doing a similar job. I mean, the countries are doing a similar job. We're working a lot with the new varieties. How do you say varieties? Yes, development. I mean, in specific in table grape, the Ministry of Agriculture and the private sector are working. I mean, and they are developing and already have some success in this area in new varieties, which is sweeter, seedless, and larger size, and easy to transport. I mean, it lasts longer. And also, we're working a lot in organic production as well. I think this is a big trend. I mean, the last season we exported 20,000 tons of organic fresh fruit, especially apples and blueberries. So I think those are probably a couple of issues that we're working on. Probably next years we'll be working on that.
Philippe, maybe Philippe, you could give us what could we expect if we looked ahead 5 years' time? At the moment, when I think about Colombia, I think about bananas. I think about some tropical products, some maybe specialist exotic type products. What could I expect in 5 years' time from Colombia?
Thank you for elaborating this question, because it's actually really interesting what is going on at the moment in our country. I don't know if you're aware, 200 years ago, it took place what we call the botanical expedition. Von Humboldt went down to Latin America and discovered what he discovered. And it was amazing, his discoveries. Well, last year we had the second botanical expedition, and this happened, and it was able because we got into the peace process. Remember that in 2016, our president gained the Nobel Peace. So imagine and what all these technicals that were able to went into regions that were totally close to Colombia. So now they're classifying all the varieties that they're being founding, and I'm pretty sure Colombia will have a lot of surprises in terms of exotics. But just to mention as well, the explosion in infrastructure that we're having at the moment, that means that we are connecting our country. Our country is a quite difficult country in terms of cordilleras, and very difficult to connect. But we are now that we are improving our infrastructure very rapidly. Now we are seeing different products getting into the market. And not in vain, in 3 years, avocado in the UK, and it's our case, became our 4th largest product of exports from Colombia. Same thing with golden berries.
So
and
again, a huge amount of development going on in Colombia and across the whole region. So Matthew, you're at the sharp end of all this. You're the guys actually picking up the phone or sending the emails or Skyping or however we're doing it these days. I know, Ignacio, you're a WhatsApp fan, but what would be, as one of the leading importers in the UK, what would be your expectation of the 4 countries? Well, and maybe more by the sound of it. Ecuador might join, and 1 or 2 others.
I think, for selfishly from an avocado perspective, we own the rights to some very early and very late maturing varieties. So we're going to see a whole spread of planting of late season gem avocado, early season Carmen avocado. They're varieties similar to Hass, but it affords year-round supply. So year-round supply for domestic markets, but also possibilities for export as well. And just touching back on the organic topic is really an incredibly important point that many of the established areas around the world for organic production have very much been depleted. It's become so difficult to sustain in an avocado crop, so that the identification and the planting and production of organic avocados in these countries, Peru itself has become an incredibly big, important supply source for organic avocados. So we're going to see a lot more coming from the Pacific Alliance. Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, so look, I want a question from the floor. I'll give you 5 minutes warning that this is going to happen. So yeah, no, Chris, I know you. The guy at the back, I might come to you in a minute. Guy at the back, here, your question. Yeah, can we have a mic, please? If you can just let us
Thank
know
you.
who you are and where
Yeah.
you're from.
Yes, of course. My name is Alberto Navallas. I work for a Chilean grower. And my question is for Matthew. I live here in London, and I've seen how Westphalia is a market leader for avocados. I believe the brand has a great brand recognition. And my question is, how now that they acquired companies in the Pacific Alliance, in every country in the Pacific Alliance seems to have a Westphalia company now, right? But the brand is also linked to South Africa. When I buy Westphalia avocado, I expect it to be from South Africa. And if I buy it in the counter season, maybe it's from Mexico, I don't notice it. As a consumer, I could get confused, right? So my question is, what will be your strategy to leverage your brand with these companies without damaging the origin, which is, and the brand positioning, which is so good already?
Okay, thank you for the question. So Westphalia originated South Africa, but it's no longer just a South African company. So we have companies, growing operations around the world, but also marketing offices in a number of countries in Europe, in UK as well. But in terms of the identity, of the identification of the Westphalia brand, so in Chile, Westphalia, we have Agricom. In Peru, we have Incavo and Comet Trading. In Colombia, we have Westphalia Colombia. And in the UK, we're called Greencell. So we very much keep our identity. It's the identity that people know the companies as. So in terms of Westphalia as the global recognized marketer, that's something that we'll be pushing, but also the own brands that's recognized in those countries for certainly in the short term will remain, such as Agricom, Greencell. And so we became part of Westphalia in 2008, and we've still retained that Greencell logo, that Greencell name. It's what our customers know us as, and it's what we're known as a company, but we are linked to our parent company, Westphalia.
So that sounds to me, Matthew, like a sort of combination of global and local.
Absolutely.
That's the way it's like. Chris, we've got time for one quick question.
Thank you, John. I'm Chris Bishop. I work with post-harvest with the University of Lincoln, but I also do a lot of consultancy work around the world. And although, forgive me, I came late, so I hope this hasn't been covered.
You're forgiven.
Maybe it has. It's the whole issue of water usage. I'm aware that although my work is almost entirely on post-harvest, a number of the questions I'm being asked, and I have know very little about it, is really on how effectively are we using the water, how we, particularly with Peru in particular, I'm aware of some of the significant water pressure. So what's the plan and the strategy, not just technical, but also to get the information out to
we get the sentiment,
people.
Chris. We're going to get the answer. So, Julian, could you, in Mexico, water a big issue, an increasing issue, sort of strategy to try and, can we just have the mic down? And then, Jaime, maybe you, a quick comment on water generally. Yeah.
I am not an expert on the issue. I know there are issues with water, and I know there are issues specifically with the sustainability of production of certain products, and for sure avocado is one of them, especially given the huge amounts of avocados that we export to the US and other parts of the world.
Quick word, Matthew.
I know that the government is aware of this, and I'm sure I don't have the specific program, but I'm sure they will be working in the next few years to basically guarantee the sustainability of
It's on the radar screen.
It is. But it is a huge program. But also maybe this links me to the issue of cooperation and the technical assistance. I know the UK is very strong in post-harvest research, and in our case, is not the case of avocado, but we've worked with UK universities, particularly the University of Reading, in trying to help Mexican producers to sustainably produce jalapenos, which is chipotle. So I think there is a big window of opportunity to tackle these challenges, which are not local. They also concern the UK consumer, but obviously the Mexican producers. So I'm sure through collaboration, just to give you an example, I think through Prosperity Fund or any other collaboration initiatives, bilateral collaboration initiatives, we will be able to tackle these challenges more effectively.
Jaime, Chris obviously mentioned Peru specifically, so just a quick comment maybe?
Yeah, the short answer will be technical irrigation. It was before probably we were just spoiling our water sources, but today most of the arable land is because of the irrigation projects that we have had developed over the years. We just increased probably 200,000 hectares in the last 5 years, but most of them, I would say all of them, is from irrigation projects. So we are using the water, the right way at the moment, or what we believe is the best way to use it. Besides, it is true that the coast of Peru is practically a desert, but it's a tropical desert. And we're bringing water from the Amazon basin to the coast. So actually, instead of going all the way to the Amazon, it's coming to this part of our country.
Yeah. Okay, Philippe, I can see you're writing something. You've written almost a PhD, I think, on there. So I feel you have something to say on the issue. Then I'm going to ask Matthew to say something. And then, Ignacio, we're going to finish after that. But I'd just like you to sort of give a bit of an overall summing up about what we need to know about the Pacific Alliance in the UK, how it might relate to us, and what the impact's going to be. If you can do that, yeah, you've got a few minutes. No, we're just going to ask Philippe to... You've been writing a lot about water, Philippe, so I'm desperate to know what you've been writing.
No, it's quite funny because we were able to anticipate that this question was coming this morning.
Yeah.
And of course, it's quite a difficult question to tackle. And in terms of our government, again, gaining the peace was an excuse to solve the ecological problem in Colombia that the guerrillas were causing. And of course, this problem, I think, will be a good opportunity while we're having the Avocado Congress next year in Medellin. That's the reason why I was taking notes, because I need to send the message that this is a really important point that we need to include in the agenda, because I know of the importance of the topic and repercussions that this might have to the world, especially to Colombia, because we were one of the richest countries in terms of water to the world.
Matthew, in the UK over the last few years, we've gone through carbon footprinting and zero food waste, in my view. It does seem that water is an increasingly big issue. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is.
Is it a commercial issue, or is it something consumers worry about, or where's the pressure coming from?
It's from all angles. The sustainability as a whole is at the forefront of all of our minds, and consumers care greatly where their fruit comes from and how it's produced and what goes into producing it. And we supply to a whole vast array of customers, retail, food service, wholesale, where we need to protect ourselves, we need to protect our customers as well. So there is very strict and very stringent auditing and monitoring of water use and minimizing your water use, responsible water use. And that's as far as I can really say at this stage. I mean, we have technical audits that we conduct.
I mean, is it the sort of thing that could come a point of differentiation? You know, all these countries have got great fruit, they've got great logistics. Is it partly who's the most responsible user of water? Is that something that will be taken into account in the future, do you think, or is that running ahead of ourselves a bit?
No, I think us as a company, as Westphalia as a company, the foundations we're on sustainability, ethics, environmental, humanitarian aspects. So for us, okay, that's something that's in our DNA. It's something that we act upon on a daily basis. But that's also a USP for us as well, a unique selling point that we are able to actively embrace those elements.
So water is an issue that's sort of wrapped up in other sort of corporate social responsibility issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Look, we probably overrun our time a little bit, and if we're not careful, we'll get asked to move on. So rather than have that ignominy, I'm going to sort of bring things to a close. I'll make a formal thanks in a minute, but Ignacio, we've talked about all sorts of things this morning, haven't we? We've covered quite a lot of ground in just under an hour. But could you just sort of sum up for us, maybe, and for the audience, sort of what's this all about? The Pacific Alliance. What's the benefit going to be? Clearly in your own countries, but also why in the UK should we be interested? What difference is it going to make to us? And anything else you'd like to say?
I mean, just one number, if you want. I mean, if you take all the exports in fresh fruit of the Pacific Alliance countries, all what we export to the world, the United Kingdom is just the 4%. I mean, 4% of our exports are going to the United Kingdom. So we have a huge opportunity in this market. I mean, we have a lot of varieties, we have a lot of volume to offer, we have quality, and we have, reliability. So please go to our stands and find out more about the Pacific Alliance. We have database. I mean, we have online database for you to take decisions. We can see in our database all the information about our exporters, how many boxes are they exported in a daily basis. So there is a lot of information, there is a lot of production in the Pacific Alliance, and I'm pretty sure we can benefit each other with our production.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as a final question then, maybe Ignacio, we're going to hear a lot more about this Pacific Alliance from what you're saying. Is that right?
Definitely you're going to hear more about not only fresh fruit, but also in all of the other areas, because Pacific Alliance is a big integration process. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we probably have reached the end of our time. So I'd like to thank several people. I'd like to thank. I'd obviously like to thank the organisers of the London Produce Show for organising this session, and not least for asking for me to be involved. I found it particularly interesting. We can have a great panel. We need an audience. So thank you for the people who've come along and listened this morning. I hope you. I think sort of why would you want to come to this sort of part of the trade show? There's lots of things to do here today, but I think one of the things to do is to become better informed in some way about some aspect of the fresh produce business. I would defy anybody who's been here for this morning's session to go away and not be better informed. You must be better informed about what's happening in these four countries, what the Pacific Alliance is all about, what its objectives are, how it might play out. As I think one of the comments was, there's still some areas that are still being worked through. That's a concept again that we're very familiar with in the UK at the moment. We haven't even started working through our issues with the rest of Europe yet, really. So I think I personally think we can learn a lot more about how to do this sort of thing from our colleagues in Latin America in the current context, but that's just a personal view. So what I would like to do is say thank you to the organisers, thank you for the audience for coming along and the questions. But yeah, look, we do need some people here to come and actually answer the questions. And I think I would like to thank my colleagues here who've answered the questions very openly and honestly. In one or two cases, people have said, I'm not quite sure, I'm the expert, but this is my view. We've had great answers, I think, and I think people will go away feeling much better informed about the whole subject. So I'd like to thank Matthew Churchill from Greencell. Matthew, thank you very much indeed. Philippe Angelo Campo from Pro Colombia, Philippe. And I hope you get your agenda item at the World Avocado Conference. Water is an absolutely critical issue. Ignacio Fernandez from Pro Chile, thank you for all the WhatsApps last week. I wonder who's this guy, I was thinking. Started WhatsApping me. I've got a new WhatsApp friend. I'd like to thank Jaime Cardenas from the Peru Trade Office, and last but certainly not least, Julian Gustavo Salazar from Pro Mexico. And look, I hope people have enjoyed it. I hope you have a great rest of the day here. I guess you guys will all be around later in the day at some point, yeah?
Of course.
Yep, and so it doesn't have to stop here. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. I hope you've enjoyed this part of it in particular. And thanks very much indeed for all your attention and support. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks to you.